which you called arguments, where he said he would body him, you told the fire investigators that you had no known enemies, correct?
Right. I didn't have any enemies.
And you said you think of no one that would dislike you enough to want to burn the vehicle, correct?
That could be what I said. Like I said, it was 4 years ago. I'm not exactly sure. But
You also told Mr. Wroblewski from the fire department that you were going to talk to your neighbors in the morning. Do you recall telling them that?
Yes.
And that you were going to get back to him with any additional information,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And you did not call him back the next day, did you?
Maybe not the next day, but I did call him back.
You didn't call anybody about the information you're now telling us about Mr. Ford until May 31st of 2017. Isn't that correct?
No, I don't think that's
You called Detective Looney on May 31st, 2017 and spoke to him on the phone, didn't you?
I did speak to someone on the phone, but I don't think it was that far in between. Like, that doesn't really make sense that it was that long ago.
Do you know how long it was?
It was around, no, I don't know exactly.
Is it safe to say it wasn't until you saw the news that showed that Mr. Ford was in trouble that you then made the phone call and for the first time told somebody about this incident between you, your son, and Mr. Ford?
I don't think it was necessarily that he had been arrested, but I remember seeing the detectives up in that area, and so that's when I contacted someone.
And when you say the detectives in the area,
They were investigating the fire, the house fire, the second house fire.
all right, the one at 693 Fultz.
Yes.
And if I told you that occurred in May of 2017, would that refresh your recollection as to when you saw the detectives and you first made those comments?
Possibly. Like I said, it's been a long time. I'm not necessarily 100% sure on when I contacted someone.
Ms. Ware, Ms. Sams, excuse me. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Ms. Sams, you indicated that on the night of the fire you saw the defendant.
Yes, I did.
And where did you see him?
He was standing about right here
Describe where you're pointing.
in a driveway. It's actually the first driveway past my driveway on Hillcrest.
And that's, you're referring to State's Exhibit 13?
Yes.
Okay. And, ma'am, you indicated on cross-examination that you didn't think anyone would set your car on fire over an argument.
Right.
So you didn't think it was a defendant based on the argument that you had saw?
Not in the very beginning, no, I did not. When
Then
I
after-
seen him standing outside, I don't know, it crossed my mind, but I didn't really think that it was him. No, I did not.
And then when you saw he was being investigated for the fire at 693 Fultz, you were starting to put two and two
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Sustained as in the form of the question.
I don't have any, oh, hold on one second. At the time of this incident, what was your name?
Nigel Ware?
Nigel Ware, now it's Nigel Sams.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sims. You may step down. I know Molly Jordan is next, but that's probably over 45 minutes, I would think, right?
No. I don't think we have time.
Yeah, you can. Thank you very much, sir.
I guess my question to the defense is, because Ms. Jordan's already testified.
I'm sorry.
I said, I guess my question to the defense is, since Ms. Jordan has already testified regarding her qualifications, are you prepared to stipulate that she's previously testified in those?
We would consider this a continuing testimony. They don't
Okay.
have to go
we'll start. So call your next witness.
We're going to call Molly and Jordan.
And there's new microphone covers. I don't know if you saw them. Okay. I missed it. The board was in my way. Welcome back. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and have a seat. I'll remind you, even though I just swore you in, this is continuing testimony from your testimony last week. Mr. LaPrince, you may begin.
I just have a long, Judge. I was thinking she was going to go out for lunch, but no, I haven't.
Before you start, Mr. D'Angelo, how many slides are on 105? A through J? Is that right?
There's going to be more, Judge. The next witness will testify.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome back, Ms. Jordan. Just for the record, if you would just tell us your full name and spell your last name.
Molly Jordan, Jordan.
Hold that microphone closer to you. Thank you.
And Ms. Jordan, I think we have an agreement with the defense that basically we don't need to go through your background qualifications and training as we did the first time you testified in this case.
Okay.
All right? So basically, at this point in time, we want to talk about a separate situation in which you became involved in doing some testing. You had mentioned the first time you had testified that not only do you do accelerant type testing, but you do other types of testing such as fingerprint testing.
Say that again. I didn't hear
Yeah,
anything.
go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
I was going to remind you.
I've been sitting down all day and I forgot. When you previously testified, you talked about the different duties you have and things that you do. And besides or in addition to accelerant type testing, you also do fingerprint type testing.
Yes.
All right. And so for the jury, just specifically just for the fingerprint type testing, what kind of training do you have in order to do that?
So training for that was 6 months in-house at our laboratory from the man who basically built up that latent print division. And then I was competency tested in a blind test to make sure that I could do it on my own. And then after that, I received outside agency training from OPATA, which is Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy. They actually have classes that teach you how to process items for latent prints, what kind of latent prints you're looking for, what the best processing methods are, and how to preserve them.
All right. And so you have been, I guess, deemed to be an expert in the determination of fingerprint comparisons. Is that fair?
We don't do comparisons, I do processing. So I
All
will
right.
process for latent prints, and then I will preserve it with a tape lift or a photograph, and then that will get sent on to another agency, usually BCI.
All right. And BCI would be the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, correct?
Correct.
And that's under the Attorney General of the state of Ohio.
Correct.
All right. So your job is not to compare prints. You just collect them from items, preserve them so that somebody else can examine them and make that comparison.
Correct.
All right. So directing your attention specifically to an incident that took place on January 23rd of 2017, did you have an opportunity to, or were you requested to examine an item in order to determine if there was any fingerprints on that item?
Yes.
All right. Now, in the terminology used, latent print, correct?
Yes.
Could you just tell us briefly what a latent print is?
Yeah, a latent print is something that you can't see with your naked eye. It's something that has to be processed in order to bring it out so that we can see it.
All right. And when you do that, how do you bring it out?
So when I receive evidence in, it goes under two different categories. We have a non-porous category, which means it's not going to absorb water. And then we have a porous category, which is like paper, porous items that will absorb water. So the item in this case was a non-porous item. So for those types of items, I typically will do a visual examination of the item. I will jot down in my notes what I see, and then I will process it with cyanoacrylate fuming, which is basically like a super glue. I put it in a chamber, and I warm up the chamber, and then I put the item in the chamber, and then the super glue goes on a heating plate inside that chamber. And what that does is it brings up the cyanoacrylate, and it kind of looks like a little white smoky thing inside the chamber, and it's going to adhere to any prints that might be there. And the reason it's humidified is because our prints are about 98% water, so we need to kind of bring back, if there's anything there, humidify it to bring back any of the like the components of it. So the super glue will adhere to any ridge detail that might be on that item. And then after that, when that's finished, I will look at it again and document if I see anything. And then in this case, I processed it with something called Ardrox, which is a liquid solution that I spray on it. And it basically, it will stick to the cyanoacrylate, and it will fluoresce any prints if they're there.
All right. And when you do this process, are you altering the actual item?
No.
Okay. If you recall, what was the item that you were asked to examine?
A black gas cap, like from a vehicle.
And did you have an opportunity to do that?
Yes, I did do that.
And when did you do that? Do you
It was
recall?
January of 2017.
And the process you just described, did you do that process?
Yeah, that's the exact process I did on that item.
All right. And what, if any, results did you have?
I did not find any latent prints.
So let's just talk about that very briefly. You said you found no latent prints. Are there times where you find partial prints?
Yes, if I did find any type of ridge detail, I would have documented that.
All right. So this gas cap, you found nothing.
Correct.
In your profession, would that be something that you would thought to be unusual?
With that type of item, no.
And why is that?
First of all, it's textured. So usually it's difficult to process items like that for prints. But there's also a lot of other environmental things that have to be considered. Like, I have no idea what it went through before I received it. So I don't know if it was outside. I don't know, it depends on the packaging. But with that type of item and the shape of it, and you think you're only holding it, you're just, and the pressure you usually have to enforce on it to get it to come open, usually it's a lot of pressure. So usually it won't leave a really good print if it leaves one at all.
As far as the item and the things you just told, that you would have to use pressure to turn that item in as it would be used on a car, was it reasonable to attempt to get fingerprints?
I will process anything they ask to be processed for latent prints. I will always try.
Okay. And of course, you don't know if who touched it, if anybody, was wearing gloves or not.
Correct.
And you wouldn't know if it had been wiped down or not.
No, I wouldn't know any of that.
And even if there were prints on there, if somebody had wiped it down, what result would you have?
It just depends.
Okay.
If there were prints on there and they wiped it down, they could possibly wipe it off. It just depends on how dirty the person's hands were, if the person is a natural secretor, or if they just did a crappy job wiping it down.
All right. And you could have a smeared print.
Yes.
Right? Okay. You mentioned the word secretor, and tell us what that means.
Just somebody who sweats a lot.
All right. And is that more likely to find a fingerprint of somebody who secretes versus who doesn't secrete?
It's more likely.
Okay. And are there, people that, could touch an item and they don't secrete very much, but even though they touch it, they don't leave a print?
Correct.
All right. So the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, correct?
Correct.
So let me talk about DNA. Do you collect for DNA?
I will swab an item for DNA if it is requested.
And you don't do that testing either, is that fair?
Correct, I don't test it.
You would do the same thing, you would swab an item and then send it off to maybe BCI for them to do an analysis.
Right.
In this case, you were not asked to do DNA testing, is
No.
that correct? So you did the fingerprint testing and you had a result that there was no fingerprints.
Yes.
Subsequent to that, did you have a request about DNA testing?
Yes, we did.
All right. And would you have done the testing?
If I had known at the time when the original item was submitted that they would like DNA and latent prints at the same time, that would have changed my processing method for latents, and I could have done that. But at the time when it was submitted to us, it was just a latent print request, so I processed it as a latent print request. And then later, after the item has already had the dye stain on it, the R-drops, it's already gone through that process, the DNA request came in, and we could not, it would have altered any DNA that would have been on the item.
All right. Do you know if that item was still in existence at the time, or had it been destroyed?
Reading through the conversations in the case in our system, I believe we had a signed destroyed evidence release form, so it was not in our possession.
All right. So basically, after you're done with your testing, you then release it back to the agency for destruction, or some other person for destruction?
So when we generate a report, like the latent print report, they would say, no latent prints were found. We send with them, with that report in the snail mail, that you can have your evidence sent back, you can come pick your evidence up, or you can have your evidence destroyed. So we have a form where somebody had marked destroy evidence, and it's signed and it's scanned in, and so therefore we destroyed it on site.
All right. And that would have been between the time that you did your examination for latent prints and the time for the request for the DNA testing?
Yes.
Since there was no latent prints found by you, I'll still ask you, the opinion that you gave us here today that there was no latent prints on that item at all, is that within a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing. Oh. I apologize. See, I'm looking for going after things too. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show you what I marked as states, what's been marked as states 106. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, this is the report that I generated.
All right. And that's not the actual report, that's a copy?
Oh, yeah.
And it's an accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
All right. And it indicates on here, I think the words, no latent prints of value were found on exhibit number 1.
Correct.
All right. Now, when you say no latent prints of value, you found no prints.
No prints, correct.
And the date of that report was January 30th, 2017.
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Riley?
Good afternoon, Ms. Jordan. Just a couple questions for you. Again, you act in your role as a forensic examiner based on what the other agencies ask you to do, correct?
Yes.
Right. So the fire department submits an item to you, and you do only what they ask you to do, correct?
I do only what I'm trained to do.
Okay. And you're trained to identify and lift prints, correct?
Yes.
and you don't actually do the comparisons, correct?
Correct.
Are you trained at all in how to make those comparisons?
Yes, I have taken those classes through the OPATA.
All right. So you know when you pull a latent print and you send it off to somebody for a comparison, they compare the unknown, the latent print, with the known, a known sample, correct?
Yes.
And then they see if those match, correct? And the same is true for DNA. You swab for the DNA, correct?
Correct.
And you send that off to the lab to determine what the DNA pattern is, if you will, correct?
Yes, the DNA analyst will.
And then they compare that with a known sample, correct?
Yes, if they have it.
And that all, I guess the direction on that comes from the investigating agency, correct?
Yes.
And the only thing that you were asked to do in terms of fingerprints or DNA regarding the state of Ohio versus Stanley Ford is what we just talked about just now, correct?
Just the latent prints.
Right. And nobody asked you, well, they asked you to do DNA, but it was too late, correct? When we talk about the fingerprints, I think you talked about a natural secretor, and Mr. LaPrenzi asked you a little bit about gloves or wiping down. Am I correct in my understanding? You take that aside, leave aside gloves, leave aside wiping down. In your expert opinion, based on the object you were testing, it was very unlikely that you were going to find a print anyway, correct?
Yeah, that's a tough surface.
Thank you.
Just very briefly. Very briefly.
Take your mask.
As an expert, you know that based on the surface that you found on that gas cap, correct?
The surface of the gas cap and experience in processing for latent prints.
And you're an expert in that.
Yes.
So a detective may not have that same knowledge.
They may not, but it never hurts to try.
No, I mean, in other words, they wouldn't automatically assume, oh, this is a surface that is not going to produce a latent print.
They may not.
Okay. And so they send it to you to make that determination.
Yes.
All right. Is it fair that the DNA that would be found comes from latent prints?
Yeah, I mean, it can.
Thank you. I'm not the
DNA doesn't come exclusively from prints, correct?
Not exclusively.
It comes from bodily substances, correct?
Yep, skin cells.
Skin cells, sweat, correct?
Correct.
Those might be the same components that make up a latent print, but they're not exclusive, correct? All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Jordan, thank you very much. You may step down.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break. I'll remind you, I'll give you the full one this time, of the admonition I've previously given you regarding your conduct in this matter. It's important that you be fair and attentive. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. This includes family, friends, and the media. You must not post or read anything about this case, including yours on your cell phone. Any discussion, if discovered, could lead to a mistrial, which would severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Do not form or express an opinion on the case until it's finally been submitted to you. It is, by my calculations, 12:20. We'll take an hour break. You'll be back in the jury room, and we'll begin at 1:20, and then leave your notepads upside down on your seats. Thank you.
All right, please. Members of the jury, please remain in the jury room for just a few moments, a few minutes. Thank you.
All right.
we'll call her right before she testifies, because we're not getting back here till 1:20. We have a witness before her, so, you know what I mean?
You want to leave it away here, or do you want to let her test it?
I'm gonna let her in to test it, and then, I figure we'll disconnect. Is that fair? Or, yeah, she,
I prefer that the way that whatever she wants to do.
okay. Hi, Miss Taylor, this is Joe D'Angelo.
Yes.
How are you today?
Here.
You're here? Okay. I'm doing well. We're here too. Hey, so, you know, your link, did you get the link on your email?
No.
All right, I sent it to Audrey Taylor, 1909@gmail.com. Is it Audrey? Okay. Hold on one second. Okay, so I'm going to resend it to AudreyTaylor1909@gmail.com. I'm going to send it right now, okay? Right, okay. Okay, so I just sent it. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Does your son's laptop, does it have a camera? Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, we're running a little bit behind here. Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, Audrey, can you see me? Oh. Audrey, can you hear me now? Okay. You have to move the camera a little bit so we can see your face. We can't see your face. Okay. All right. So I can see you, you can see me, you can hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yes. All right. So I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to share this. I want to see if you can see it. Okay, hold on. Do you see a map now on your computer? You don't see a map like right here in the middle? Okay, it's black. Black, okay. Hold on. Okay, I see a map. All right, I just stopped it again, so I'm going to show it to you again here. You see a map now? No. Hold on. Yes, I see a map. You see a map? I see a map. Okay. You see my cursor here? Where it says Fulton Street? You see the cursor? Okay. Yes. Is this your house right here? Yes. Okay. All right. So what's going to happen now is we're going to put you in a waiting room. So I would suggest you do not, turn off your computer or log out since it took us a little while to log you out. What you can do is in the corner, I'm going to stop sharing this at this point, but in the corner of your screen, you see where it says mute? You can't see me now? Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's no problem. Okay. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. We'll just leave you right now. We're going to leave you right here. And just don't turn off your computer or do anything, and we will have you ready to go. You don't have to click mute. Everything's ready to go. Okay? Do you want me to click mute for her? Yeah, if you can, that might help. And then when we get ready to go, we'll just unclick mute, and we'll, be ready to testify. Okay, and where would it be at on here? It's just in the lower left-hand corner, but don't even worry about that, ma'am. We're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, don't worry. Okay.
just saw it when I happened to walk by Ken's desk.
The Suffolk County Court of Common Pleas is again in session. The Honorable Christine Crouch presiding.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call your next witness. Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat. Once you're seated and comfortable, if you'll remove your mask, keep your voice up, and then speak directly into the microphone, please. Thank you.
Yeah, don't, slide that back until we're ready so that the attorneys can see you. Yep, very good. Sir, if you would, introduce yourself to the jury, tell them your full name and spell your last name for the record, please.
My name is Lieutenant Robert Robleski, W-R-O-B-L-E-W-S-K-I, and I was a special investigator with the Akron Fire Department, Arson Bureau.
All right. And you said lieutenant, so at your highest rank was lieutenant?
Correct.
And are you currently working for the Akron Fire Department?
No, I retired as of May 1st.
Good for you. So let's talk about your career and your training background and experience. What was the first job you held in regards to law enforcement or fire fighting or fire investigation?
Actually, I started out as a paramedic in 1981, and I worked primarily in the private ambulance service. I went to work for the city of East Cleveland. I was a paramedic there for 20 years. I was hired by the Akron Fire Department in May of 1988. I was a firefighter paramedic for 33 years. I was commissioned as a police officer through the Summit County Sheriff's Office in 1991. I joined the Akron Fire Arson Bureau as an investigator in August of 1995.
Okay.
And just completed my career.
All right. So the last 25, you've been an investigator with the Akron Fire Department.
Correct, 23, but that's correct.
23. And in order to become a firefighter, I believe you said you had to be a commissioned officer, and you do that through the Sheriff's Department?
For the Arson Bureau, yes.
Okay.
All the arson investigators are sworn commissioned police officers. I put myself through the Summit County Sheriff's Academy because I wanted to be competitive for this position as my career developed.
All right.
And I was able to do that.
So after you completed their program, then you became OPATA certified?
Correct.
All right. And then you held that commission throughout your career all the way to your retirement?
Correct.
Very good. Sir, let me just ask you, in your 23 years as being an investigator in the Akron Fire Department, how many, if you know, fires did you investigate to determine whether they were intentionally or accidentally set?
That would be speculation. I don't think I ever really calculated or tabulated that.
If you could
Several hundred.
All right.
Several hundred.
So I was going to say, you can break it down monthly, or if you do how many a month, how many a year, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you think it's several hundred?
Several hundred.
All right. Let me direct your attention specifically to January 23rd of 2017. Did you have the occasion to investigate a fire on that date?
Yes, I did. Fire companies responded. Initial report came in as a house fire. The first engine on the scene reported it was a working car fire in the driveway, had not yet extended to the house. They waved everybody off. They handled it by themselves, recognized that it required an arson investigator to come out to the scene and continue to work the scene.
All right. And you said a working car fire. What's a working car fire mean?
Working car fire means there's actual evidence visible of a fire presently in the state of burning, whether it's open flames, smoke showing, whatever that would indicate, yes, there is an active fire condition that needs fire department attention. That's
all right, so when you
fire.
say working car fire, you're not talking about the car working, you're talking
No, that's the actual process of a fire burning the vehicle is happening.
Very good. So you told us that the engine number 6, I think it was, goes out, handles the fire aspect of it, and then who notifies you?
They called me directly.
All right.
through dispatch and through the command staff that was working that night.
And based on, your investigation, based on, I guess, the reports that you received, what time would this car fire have been reported?
I believe it was about 2 o'clock in the morning,
All right.
shortly thereafter.
All right. And if we could get it a little bit more specific, would there be something that I could show you that would refresh your recollection as to the specific time of that that was reported?
Yes, the incident reports that were generated should have the dates and times on them.
And is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. That would be the incident report I generated on that.
All right. And does that refresh your recollection as to what time the fire would have been reported?
Yes, the time is the 23rd of January 2017. The original alarm time was 2:05 in the morning.
So that's 2:05 a.m.
Correct.
And what time would you have reported or gotten to the scene?
I believe I reported on the scene just after 2:30 in the morning, after they had taken care of extinguishing the fire, recognizing the need for me to come out there, communicating that through the command staff, and then dispatch contacted me and said, you're requested at this scene.
All right. And so I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation, so to speak, that with some photographs in it. I've had an opportunity to show this to you prior to you taking the stand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All the photos that I'm going to show you in this slide, did they accurately represent the scene or item that you saw on that occasion?
That is correct.
All right. So this is State's Exhibit 105, and it contains 12 slides in it. Slide number 1 is a title slide. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it just indicates 723 Russell, and that's where you reported to investigate this fire, correct?
Correct. That was the actual street location of the address where it occurred, yes.
And is that in what city, state, and county is that in?
That's in the city of Akron, Ohio, Summit County.
Very good. And then you had already told us that that it happened on January 23rd, 2017, correct?
Correct.
All right. Showing you slide number 2 of State's Exhibit 105. Can you tell us what this is showing us?
Yes, this is the orientation of the house at 723. It was addressed on Russell Avenue. However, the driveway where the vehicle was parked and the fire occurred was around the corner, actually on Hillcrest Avenue.
Okay. And so that house, I mean, it's obstructed by this aerial view with the trees, correct?
Correct.
So we just kind of see the back corner of the house. Is that fair?
Yes, and a portion, it looks of possibly the driveway there behind some other trees on the street.
All right. And do you know if this residence at 723 Russell is a single family or multi-family home?
It's a single family home.
All right. And did you have any reason to go inside that home at all?
I did not.
All right. You had indicated that initially the call went out as a house fire. When you arrived, was there anything to indicate to you that the house had any involvement in the fire?
No, there was no involvement of the fire at all. As Engine 6 had reported on their arrival, it involved a vehicle parked in the driveway, but had not yet gotten to the point where it involved the home.
All right. And just for the record, this is an aerial photograph of the intersection of Russell and Hillcrest. Is that fair?
That is correct.
And also, if the top of the screen is north, that would be on the northeast corner of Russell and Hillcrest. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. Showing you slide 3, which is a title screen, and that refers to the exterior of 723 Russell, correct?
Yes.
Showing you slide 4 of 12. What are we looking at here?
This is documenting the house itself at that location to document where this incident occurred, but also to show that there's no involvement involving the house
All right.
with the fire.
And is this house, the door here that we see, is this facing Russell?
Correct. It is facing Russell Avenue. It is actually addressed off Russell, even though the driveway and the vehicle that I was investigating was around the corner off of Hillcrest.
All right. So it's showing you slide 5 of 12. What are we seeing here?
This would be the front corner of the house at an angle to show two sides of it, also demonstrating it's not involved in fire at all.
And so the left side of this house that we're seeing here would be along or parallel to Hillcrest.
Correct.
Okay. And slide number 6 of 12, what do we see here?
That's the side yard facing down Hillcrest Avenue to the vehicle that's parked in the driveway.
And what am I, can you see what I'm circling here? Of course, it doesn't show up on here.
You have to hit the annotate button on the main screen, on this button, check down on the left, see where it says annotate.
Well, I was using the cursor.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you, oh,
Oh, see
good
it?
Lord.
Now you gotta go clear.
Yeah, how do I clear it now?
Left up on the right-hand corner. That arrow, see that green arrow?
Yeah, it never works for me.
There you go. See, Mr. Oleski, see that arrow on the right-hand top corner of the screen?
Right that?
Yep, hit that. And then see down at the bottom, it'll say clear on the bottom left. Thank you.
Perfect. Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right. So see where I'm circling here? What are we seeing here?
That's the vehicle parked in the driveway.
All right. And again, we're still on slide number 6. Now moving to slide 7 of 12. What do we see here?
This is documenting the engine compartment of the fire and also the registration tag of the vehicle, identifying it. Shows that the fire did not originate within the engine compartment, which is a common place for fires to occur in vehicles.
Okay.
It did not occur there. The hood was opened by the fire companies during their suppression operations, and this is as they had left it for me.
All right. And when you say for the suppression operations, why would they open the hood if there was no fire coming from it?
Well, they access the battery so that they can disable some of the power features of the vehicle and make it safer for the firefighters themselves to operate and to work on the vehicle.
All right. And then, of course, then you can automatically see to determine whether there's a fire in there or not.
Correct.
Okay. States, showing you slide 8 of States Exhibit 105. And what are we looking at here?
This is the rear corner of the vehicle, localized to where the fire originated. It was obvious that the fire was exterior of the vehicle. It didn't start on the inside of the car and migrate its way out. There was a wick of some type that had been pushed into the fuel filler neck and provided the accelerant to cause this kind of localized damage right at the fuel door on the vehicle. I noticed that the gas cap was on the opposite side of the vehicle. I know I'm ahead of myself just a little bit, but it was missing. The fire was localized to this corner, exterior. It's obvious there's no accidental ignition source. This is a set fire.
All right. And you said that it's obvious this is not, there's no ignition source. Are there ignition sources on the outside of a vehicle?
Potentially an electrical short or a fault in maybe one of the taillights or the electrical system could be the origin of the fire, the heat source. But in this case, because all of the damage is exterior and it's obvious that some type of an accelerant fuel had been used, accidental ignition source seemed highly unlikely.
Okay. So now showing you slide 9 of 12. What are we looking at here?
That again is the vehicle. It shows the localized damage caused to the outside of the vehicle by the fire. It also shows that the interior of the vehicle is relatively clean, has very little smoke or heat no type of destruction of the interior of the vehicle as a result of the fire.
All right. And you said that there was a wick of some sort put into that tank, correct?
Correct.
Would that have been removed in the suppression of the fire?
Or consumed by the fire. Yes, either way.
All right.
Normally, our guys would not mess with something like that if during the course of applying a water stream to it, it became dislodged. That would happen, but otherwise, for the most part, our guys are not gonna mess with that.
All right. And then, oops. Slide 10 of 12, what are we looking at here?
This is the driver's door, again showing the interior of the vehicle. Does not appear to be damage or destruction caused by the fire. The broken glass was our guys breaking in to be able to get access to the inside of the vehicle, similar to opening the hood and disabling the battery.
All right. And then slide 11 of 12.
That would be the gas cap that was on the opposite side of the vehicle from where the fuel filler door is, opposite side, laying up against the fence.
And was there any fire damage to this fuel gas cap?
It did not appear to be. It did not appear that it was involved at the time the fire was burning. It had been removed and relocated.
And based on the amount of damage around the fire, around the gas tank area where you would fuel it, the amount of heat the amount of heat that caused the damage to that area, would you have expected to see some damage to this cap if it had been on?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yes, absolutely. It would be melted or distorted in some fashion, maybe even partially consumed.
And is this cap, and I know I'm probably dating myself, gas caps used to, be more metal. Now, are they all plastic?
For the most part, yes.
Was this a plastic one?
It was a plastic one.
All right. And then, just because I said there's 12 slides, 12 of 12 is actually a blank screen, correct?
I see a blank screen, yes.
Okay. So, Lieutenant, how often in the city of Akron, where your jurisdiction is, do you have car fires?
Car fires, unfortunately, are a regular occurrence in Akron. Many times they're intentionally set. Oftentimes, there's absolutely no information that we're able to generate at the time of the incident to identify who may be responsible. Sometimes we're fortunate and we have witnesses. Most of the time, not so much.
All right.
So car fires are a regular occurrence in Akron.
All right. And at the time that this car fire took place, did you take efforts to investigate who set this fire?
I spoke with the owner of the vehicle. I asked her, do you have any issues with anyone? Do you have any problems where anyone would want to retaliate in such a fashion and burn your vehicle? She said she had no idea who could have done it.
All right. So at that point in time, you had no suspects or no leads of individuals that may have set this fire?
Correct. I had nothing.
As far as the evidence that could have maybe given you a lead or a suspect at this fire, what would that have been?
Well, the gas cap was kind of like a fortuitous find because potentially latent fingerprints could be on that. It's plastic. Sometimes that's not possible because gasoline itself is a solvent and can dissolve them and destroy them. But it's worth taking a chance.
All right. And when you say them, you're talking about your fingerprints?
Correct.
All right. But for you, the assumption was whoever put the wick into the gas tank would have, you were assuming, would have taken that gas cap off.
It would seem reasonable to believe whoever took the gas cap out to put the wick in was the one who handled it, yes.
All right. So based on that, what did you do?
I collected it as evidence. I sent it to the State Fire Marshal's forensic lab and requested that latent fingerprints attempt to be made.
All right. And how often in your career have you requested latent fingerprints?
It's not unusual. It depends on each scene is different. what you're trying to process, what you're trying to learn from the evidence that you submit. But it's not an all the time thing, but it's semi-regular that we'll submit.
And when you submit, how often, if you know, do you get latent fingerprints found?
I couldn't give you a number. Again, it would be speculation. Sometimes the lab is great. They say, hey, we got a hit for this.
Yeah, I mean, ask and answer, so I don't want you to speculate.
All right.
Sustain.
In your career, do you recall fingerprints leading to you discovering who the arsonist was?
Correct, yes.
You have?
That has happened.
Okay. And if you know, how often does that happen? With you?
I've been fortunate and been able to solve some cases because of that.
In 23 years, approximately how many times?
Several dozen.
Okay. And so fingerprints are successful for you at times?
Yes.
Through your career. So you sent it off for fingerprint analysis. You did not send it off for DNA analysis, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You then received the results of the latent examination from the Ohio State Fire Marshal.
Correct.
And that result was what?
Negative. They said they could not find any latent fingerprints.
All right. At that point in time, and I believe the report was dated January 30th of 2017, at that point in time, did you have any awareness or association that this fire was related to any other fires?
No.
And you now know that there was a fire at 719 Fultz prior to this fire you're investigating.
Correct.
You did not make any association between the deaths or that fire to this fire?
None.
After you have evidence sent off to the Ohio State Fire Marshal and they test it, if there's nothing of significance in that test, what happens with that evidence?
They send a form back asking what our request is do we want to hold on to it? Do we want to run different tests? Do we want to destroy it? It's been our practice in our office that we don't let our stuff just sit there collecting at the fire marshal's office. If it's been tested, it's negative, there's nothing that can be done, we can destroy it.
All right. So at that point in time, I believe it was somewhere around February 6th, you approved the destruction of that gas cap.
That's correct.
All right. And at that time, you thought that gas cap was related to a car fire only.
That's it.
At that point in time, did you think that gas cap had any additional evidentiary value?
No.
Following that, did you ever receive any information from the owner of the vehicle or anyone else that would give you additional information as to who a suspect might be in that car fire?
I did not, no.
All right. So as far as that investigation went, nothing further happened with that investigation. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Let's move forward now. Now this happened January 23rd, 2017. In June of 2017, approximately 5 months later, you then made a request. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that request was to who?
Would have been to the State Fire Marshal's office. Is it possible to recover any usable DNA from that evidence that had been submitted previously?
And at that point in time, what were you informed?
I was told that the process to attempt the latent fingerprint recovery had damaged the sample to the point where it was not usable to be a DNA source.
All right. And is that something that you were aware of prior to that?
No, I was not. I did not realize that.
At this point in time, 2021, do you recall why or what prompted you to make that request in June of 2017?
Other than the fact that we had a significant fire in May in that same neighborhood, I can't think of what would have prompted me to make a request in May.
All right. So you have no specific recollection of what prompted you to make that request in
That's
June?
correct.
And I believe it was June 1st you made that request?
Yes,
And you know that from the documents that you reviewed prior to being here today?
yes.
And the only thing you can think of is it might have been related because of this closeness in time to this house fire?
Correct. One of the other investigators in the office may have said,
Yeah, hold on.
Well,
I'm sorry,
Sustain that, sustain.
but you have no independent recollection of that?
correct.
All right. Obviously, the fact that you're requesting it in June 1st, 2017, it had already been destroyed and you'd already approved that in February, right?
Correct.
And at that point in time, did you even recall that you had approved that?
No, I did not.
How often do you get destruction requests from the Ohio State Fire Marshal's office?
Pretty much following any submissions we make after their testing is done and they report the results, they will give us an opportunity. Do you want us to hold on to this? Is this something that you can destroy now that you have whatever results our office could provide to you? So they send a form to the office pretty much with every submission we have requesting what we would like to have done with it.
And do you treat evidence of that nature differently between a car fire and a house fire where people die?
All of the evidence is recovered with a specific intent that hopefully we can recover identification information or whatever from that particular piece of evidence that can further the investigation. So whether it's a car fire or whether it's a multiple fatality house fire, all the evidence we collect, we would submit with a deliberate goal to try and learn more to identify who's responsible or who's involved in this.
And I'm sorry, I didn't ask that question very well. After that's done, and they ask you and they send you a destruction order, when you review that destruction order to determine whether that item should be destroyed or not, do you view that differently if it's a car fire versus a 7-person homicide?
Oh, I would think, yes, because of the ramifications of the whole thing, yes. I mean, obviously, a car fire, which occurs on a regular basis in Akron, as opposed to a multiple fatality fire, yes, it would be a significant thing for us.
And of course, we all like to be Monday morning quarterbacks. In hindsight, 2020, would you have done something different?
Objection. Oh, sustained.
May I have a moment, Judge? Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Mr. Riley?
Good afternoon, Mr. Robliski. I'm Scott Riley. This is Joe Gorman. Together we represent Stanley Ford.
Yes, sir.
I've got your report. You and I have never talked before, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I'm just going to ask you a couple questions because you went through most of it with Mr. Laprenzi.
Okay.
But you would agree with me, during the course of your investigation, you got there around 2:30 a.m.?
Yes,
Is it fair to say that you stayed, I think I saw a report, till about 4:30 a.m.?
could be, yes.
All right, so during the course of those 2 hours, you took pictures, you walked the neighborhood, you looked at the scene, correct?
Yes.
You talked to the one witness who was Miss Ware.
The owner of the vehicle.
The owner of the
yes.
vehicle. You didn't talk to the neighbors, correct?
I did not.
You were aware that the neighbors actually had called 911. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware where the call came from, 911 calls. That's not something that, in this particular circumstance, I needed to investigate at that time.
And in fairness, you also did not conduct a neighborhood canvass, correct?
Correct. It was dark, it was the middle of the night. No one had come outside to watch what was going on, to make themselves known in the neighborhood that, hey, this person's awake, maybe I could speak with them. I did not bother people at 4 o'clock.
All right, so for the course of the 2 hours that you were doing your investigation, talking to folks, taking pictures, you saw no neighbors outside in the street watching what was going on, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, that's all I have.
If I could do just from right here, were you present while the fire was active at all?
No, it was extinguished by the time I got there.
Thank you.
You may step down. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Judge, the state's going to call Audrey Taylor, and just got to get a couple things over.
Yeah. But once you get on, Mr. Daniels, hit mute so that I can unmute mine.
I am muted right now. I'm going to let Ken know if he can. I am muted, yes.
You're unmuted, ma'am.
Just hold on, okay? We can hear you.
The judge is going to come read to you an oath, okay?
Ms. Taylor? Now you have to answer yes or no audibly.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Taylor, can you see me?
And
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I confirm.
Okay, thank you. So a couple things. One, I need to make sure that you're, if there's anybody else in the room, you can't have any discussions with anybody else while you're testifying. And two, you have to wait till the question is completely asked so that there's a court reporter taking everything down. And with the technology, if you talk over each other, then she doesn't get everybody's words, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Audrey J. Taylor. Capital Taylor.
Ms. Taylor, where are you currently staying? You don't have to give us an address, but just generally, where are you staying?
At present, I am in Irwin, Pennsylvania.
Ms. Taylor, do you have a residence here in the city of Akron?
Yes.
And what is your address there in the city of Akron?
705 Fulton Street, Fultz.
Do you still live in that residence, or have family members that still live in that residence?
I live in the residence.
Okay. And how long have you lived there?
Over 35, 40 years.
Ma'am, are you currently employed?
No.
And have you been employed before?
Yes.
What types of things have you done?
I have worked at a group home, which was Mary Thomas Group Home, which they sold to Hattie Garland. And then I went to work for Akron General Medical Center in the garage. I was a parking attendant.
Okay. Miss Taylor, do you know the defendant in this case, Stanley Ford?
I didn't quite catch that.
Do you know a man by the name of Stanley Ford?
Yes,
And can you tell the jury how you know him?
he lives to the right of my home. His mother lived in the corner house on Fultz, and I think that's Crestview, and he lived next door.
Okay. If I told you the intersection was Hillcrest and Fultz,
Yeah, yes,
is that right? Okay.
yes.
Now, Miss Taylor, can you tell the jury how long you've known the defendant, or Mr. Ford, if you know?
I've been an associate of his, maybe 10, 15 years.
Did you know his mother?
I would speak to his mother, but know her, no.
Okay. And she's passed away, is that right, ma'am?
Correct.
Okay. Now, would you speak with the defendant?
Yes,
And how often would you speak with him?
maybe once a week, once every other week. It depended on when I needed to go to the store,
And
and I was walking.
so you would speak with him when you were walking to the store.
Correct.
What store would that be?
It's a gas station that's on East Avenue, and right now the name escapes me.
That's okay. I understand that, ma'am. So you would speak with him when you were on your way to the to the store. Generally tell the jury how he would treat you when you would speak with him.
Pleasant, cordial.
What types of things would he talk to you about?
He would talk to me about the weather. I would say, oh, you're cutting your grass. He would say something in regard to what he was doing, because he was generally cutting both his mother's grass and the home next to it.
Okay. Now, Miss Taylor, I'd like to draw your attention to May 15th of 2017. During that time period, were you there in that neighborhood around
Yes.
Fultz? Okay. Do you recall a house fire that occurred down the street from you where a number of people perished or died?
Very much so.
Okay. And did you, before that fire, do you recall ever having a conversation with the defendant, Stanley Ford, about the residents of that house?
He mentioned to me on my way to the gas station that there was a little boy that lived in the house that was breaking off rear view mirrors. I mean the side view mirror, sorry.
And do you know how old the boy was he was talking about or referring to?
He didn't, Stanley did not tell me an age of the boy. I kind of figured the boy was between 7 and 10, okay? But the age of the boy, I do not know.
Okay. Did you know the boy who he was referring to?
No, I did not.
All right.
And when you were speaking to him about this, about the boy breaking off mirrors from the cars, what was the defendant's demeanor? How was he about this? Was he happy about this? Was he upset about this?
He was a slight bit agitated. Okay, I can't say that he was angry.
All
Okay, but like he was just a slight bit agitated. You know, the little boy broke off the. And I'm like, for real? And he said, yeah. And I mentioned to him, well, why don't you go talk to his parents? And he said, I don't know them. I said, well, knock on the door, talk to them. And if that doesn't help, call the police.
When was this conversation in relation to that? Ma'am, can you hear me now?
Yes.
When was that conversation that you had with the defendant? When was it in relation to that fire, that second fire that occurred where all those folks died?
Maybe within 5 to 7 days.
Now, that night that fire occurred, if I told you it occurred on May 15th of 2017, would you have any reason to disagree with me?
I can't tell you the exact date. I know that it was the morning after 12 o'clock is the next day. So it was that Monday early morning.
How did you learn about it?
Day.
How did you learn about it?
I heard the sirens and they were so loud, and I thought they were on East Avenue. And I, like, would they please hurry up? Would they please hurry up and move? Please, please stop the noise. And it did. And I was asleep. And I was trying not to wake up out of my sleep. After the siren stopped, I fell back to sleep. Maybe 15 minutes later, there was a harsh knock on my door. Like I thought they were going to break the door down, right? And I got up and wondering, who the shit is that at my door? My niece was staying with me. She said, I'll answer it. And I thought that it might have been one of her children, her grown children. And I laid back down. I heard her open the door and say no and close it as she passed the hall back to her room. I responded from my room in the bed, who was that? And she said, it's a fire person outside. And they said the house that is not next door, but the one next to it caught fire. And I'm like, oh my God. And I went back to sleep.
Now, Miss Taylor, did you know that family? Did you know the family that lived at 693 Fultz?
I had maybe spoke to her coming again from Manchester Road up Fultz, and I had to pass her house.
Who are you referring to as her?
This might have been 2, maybe 3 months before the fire.
Now, when you said her, are you talking about a little girl, an adult?
No. The mother was on the porch and all the children were on the porch and they were playing. And she was engaged with them in playing. And as I'm passing, I stopped my car and said hi. She responded with hello. I said, you have such a lovely family. And she said, thank you. And I drove up the street into my driveway.
Now, Ms. Taylor, do you recall a fire that occurred before that, this time in April of 2016?
I heard about that fire, yes.
Were you at your house at that time?
No,
Where were you?
I was in Maricopa, Arizona.
Why were you there?
My son, I have two children. I have one that lives here in Pennsylvania, and my other child has a barber shop in Tempe, Arizona, but he lived in Maricopa, Arizona.
Did you know the people that lived there? Did you know the people that lived there at that house that burned down in 2016?
I knew, I think his name was Lindell. I knew Tommy because he cut my grass.
And how would you describe that group of people that were living there?
A lot of male testosterone. You know, they were either outside in the driveway playing cards or playing pinochle. Okay, I'm not pinochle, dominoes. Sorry. They were either playing pinochle, cards. Okay. Lindell was always mainly on the porch, and I would wave at him and say hi. He would speak to me. We would talk about the weather. We would talk about I'm being a Steeler fan and he being a Browns fan. We would have our little
Back and forth.
It was nothing, you know. We would laugh about it and I'd say, you know, we're gonna beat you. We still gonna beat you. But he was a nice guy.
Now, Miss Taylor, would you ever, when you would talk to the defendant, would he ever say anything to you about Lindell and that crew that lived at 719 Fultz?
On my way one day to the store, in passing, his little girls were out there. And I thought they were so cute because they had like little push lawnmowers because he was cutting grass. And I spoke, he spoke back, and then he said, you know, I'm having some problems with the people across the street. And I said, what kind of problem? You know, because it's generally a quiet neighborhood. And I'm like, what kind of problems? And he said, well, there's a lot of traffic in and out of the house, and I have girls. And he thought that the gentlemen were being rude, you know, I mean, cursing and doing drugs out on the property, and he didn't. So he said that he had talked to Lindell, and that Lindell said that something to the effect that there are borders here, okay? And I will have a group meeting with them, but I can't stop what they do. They're all grown men.
And just so we're clear, that was Stanley Ford who told you that?
That was Stanley who told me what Lindell had said.
Okay. What did you tell him to do about that situation?
Believe it or not, my main thing is call the police. You know what I mean? Like, when everything else fails, that's what you're paying for. Call the police.
Miss Taylor, when you would speak with Stanley Ford, what did he tell you about his ability to start a fire?
Stanley told me that when he was much younger, that he knew how to start a fire, right? me, again, I was in the Girl Scouts. I thought possibly he was in the Boy Scouts, and they try to teach you how to take 2 sticks, you know, and so, you know, starting a fire wasn't an easy thing for me to do.
Now, what was this in reference to? I mean, what's the context of that statement that he's making to you about that?
I don't know what we were talking about, but it didn't have anything to do with the fire.
Okay. All right, hold on 1 second, ma'am, okay?
Fine.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but if you can change it to speaker view, then she'll appear bigger on the screen.
Okay.
And it'll get rid of me and.
Okay.
Hold on.
Not you, not you. Don't
I'll handle it.
Don't do anything, Miss Taylor.
Where do I do?
So up at the top.
Oh, I see. Yep. There you go.
All right.
Ms. Taylor, do you when you were telling us about what Mr. Ford, Stanley Ford, told you about Lindell, what did the defendant, or what did Stanley Ford tell you he was going to do about it?
He was going to take care of it.
Ms. Taylor, do you recall talking with Stanley Ford about potentially selling your house?
Yes, yes.
Tell us about that. Tell the jury about that.
I was trying to decide which one of my 2 children I wanted to come and stay with, okay? I wasn't for sure if I wanted to be in Arizona. I wasn't for sure if I wanted to be in Pennsylvania. So I was having a little discussion that I would really like to sell my home.
Who are you talking with?
Spend 6 months with one child, spend 6 months with the other. And we were talking about my best approach in selling my home.
And you were speaking with Stanley Ford about that?
Yeah.
And what did he tell you?
He really didn't have a pinpoint exact answer. He said, well, think about it, you know, talk to your kids, and maybe you might want to keep it and rent it out. Maybe it's better that you sell it, you know. He said, but, you know, if I were you, I would keep it.
Ms. Taylor, do you recall him telling you you don't bother anybody?
Yeah, sustained. No, ma'am, don't answer. Ma'am, do not answer. Can mute her.
The
Hold
one
on,
that-
ma'am, hold on. You can't talk,
Ms.
okay?
Taylor, sorry, I know you can't hear me very well. There's been an objection, I've sustained it. You cannot answer that question.
Okay, well, don't worry.
Yeah, it's not your fault, Ms. Taylor. It's not you.
It's my fault. Ms. Taylor, what did the defendant tell you in regards to your relationship with the neighborhood?
You got to unmute her.
Oh.
Tell her she got to.
Ma'am, or does Ken mute her? Ma'am, hold on one second, you're muted. We're gonna figure this out.
All right, Ken, unmute her. Unmute her. Okay, and then make the approval. All right, she's got to unmute herself.
Ms. Taylor, you're gonna have to unmute yourself, okay?
So tell her that the microphone at the bottom,
It's a microphone at the bottom. Press the screen.
with the red line.
That's okay, you're okay.
All right.
Okay, we can hear you now, you're good.
Okay.
All right, did you hear my last question?
No, I did not.
All right. Ms. Taylor, what did the defendant tell you about your relationship with the neighborhood and your relationship with the neighborhood? What did he say about that?
Okay, I was outside crying because the houses on the left-hand side of the street, coming from East Avenue down Fulls, all of the properties were burning on that side of the street. And I was boo-hooing, and he happened to be in the general vicinity, and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him, like, all the houses on the left-hand side of the street are burning. But no houses on the right-hand side of the street are burning. And not that I want anybody else's house to burn, but it seems like there's a ravine behind my garage, okay, and my neighbor next to the one that burnt down on the left-hand side of the street. It's a gully or ravine. And I'm like, did the city want something back there? And they're trying to burn us out of, you know, the neighborhood. I mean, like, what's going on? Why is all the houses on the left-hand side of the street burning? And I'm sorry, again, I don't want anything to burn down, but why? And he said, you don't mess with nobody on the street. And I'm like, no. You know, I speak, and I go on about my business. He said, well, I don't think that there's a problem. And I'm talking, anyway,
Is that all that he said, ma'am?
I was just,
Is that all he told you?
yeah.
Okay. Hold on one second. 1 second. Miss Taylor, when he said that to you, how did that make you feel? How did you take that?
I was like, what that got to do with the city destroying property on the left-hand side of the street, you know, and I just couldn't wrap my head. I'm talking about one thing. I just didn't see where that made sense to me. But, and I walked away still crying. You know, I never really, I didn't ask him why he said that. I was just so distraught about everything burning on my side of the street.
Okay, ma'am. I'm not going to ask any more questions, but the defense, Mr. Stanley Ford's lawyers, they might have a couple of questions for you, so you got to just hold on 1 second, okay?
Fine.
Yep. They're very nice
Can
men.
Hold on, can I go to the restroom? I really need to go to the restroom.
Yes, you can, but you can't talk to anyone, okay?
I promise, I just have to.
All right. Come back. No, maybe I didn't.
What you looking for? Oh.
Excuse me.
You may proceed, Mr. Ford.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Joe Gorman. I have another attorney that's working with me on this case. He's sitting here as well listening. His name is Scott Riley. And together we represent Stanley Ford, okay?
Okay,
All right. You and I think you would agree, have never spoken. Is that fair?
correct.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions, and sometimes my questions aren't real good questions and people don't understand them. So if you don't understand what I'm asking you, just ask me to rephrase it or repeat it so you understand before you answer. Is that fair?
Okay, yes.
Okay, good. If you answer, I'll assume you believe at least you understand the question, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, in preparation for your testimony today, in other words, getting ready to testify, you have spoken with Mr. D'Angelo, the person that was just asking you the questions, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you've probably talked to him several times over the course of time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Recently, let's talk about recently. When was the last time before you appeared on this video that you spoke with Mr. D'Angelo?
In fairness, I believe that was Monday.
Okay.
No, Tuesday.
Okay.
Oh, no, Tuesday, because Monday was a holiday.
Okay, and I promise you that's not a trick question. If it was Monday or Tuesday, it doesn't bother me. I just want to know it was in the recent past, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And back in May of 2017, you would have talked or spoken with a Detective Looney from the Akron Police Department. Do you remember that?
I remember speaking with a detective.
Okay.
What his name was, I'm not sure.
All right. Would he have been, ma'am, an African-American gentleman, bald? Do you remember that?
I believe that both, I thought that both of them were Caucasian. There was two gentlemen, and I thought both of them were Caucasian.
Oh, maybe, you know what, I think I stand corrected. I'm looking at the report where you made the statement. It was Sergeant Litke. Do you remember that?
I'm not going to say I remember the gentleman's name, but I recall the event.
Okay, and I apologize. I got the detective wrong on you. You were right, I was wrong. Did he tell you that he was recording your statement when you were giving it back then?
I'm not for sure.
Okay. In preparation for your testimony today, other than talking with Mr. D'Angelo, did you listen to the statement you made to them back then?
No.
Okay. If I told you we had that statement and we could refresh your memory, in other words, have you listen to it outside the presence of the jury if you needed to remember what you said back then, you'd be willing to do that for me, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you review any paperwork, any written reports with the prosecutor prior to you testifying today?
No.
Okay. Then what was the basis of your, if you weren't reviewing reports or listening to your prior statement, what kind of discussions were you having about your testimony today with the prosecutor?
He told me that he wanted me to testify in this proceeding.
Okay.
My statement with him is, I can't tell you anything because I was asleep.
Because you were what, ma'am?
Sleep.
Sleep. Okay.
And I proceeded to tell him at some point, I don't believe Stanley could have done that because he had 2 small children of his own.
Okay. So you let the prosecutor know that when you were getting ready to testify, correct?
Yes.
And I think you even told the detectives that back in 2017 as well, didn't you?
I believe I did. I told them I don't, because I walked up after they arrested Mr. Ford. I walked up to his home because he had 2 little children and a wife. And I was giving her my apologies because I know that it can be devastating on children, okay, to see their father arrested for something. And I told her I didn't believe that he did it.
And then, ma'am, if I had you correct.
I can't hear you.
Oh.
I can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. You, and I think you said this already to the prosecutor, you knew Mr. Ford for 10 or 15 years, correct?
Correct.
And I want to make sure I have the picture correct. You said at some point he cuts both of those lawns. You were talking, when you said the little girls were following with toy lawnmowers, were that been his daughters?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes.
So you'd gotten to know him in the neighborhood through communication once a week or once every other week for a long time.
Right.
Felt like you knew the man.
I knew some things about him. He was not a friend.
Okay,
He was an associate.
I understand.
Hi, how you doing? How you feel? Okay?
I understand. Could you hold on 1 minute for me, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you. Ma'am, I appreciate you answering my questions today. I don't have any more from you. And I'm a Buffalo Bills fan.
Well, you know what? I still root for my Steelers.
As you should. You know, they play this Sunday, against Buffalo.
Of course, of course, of course.
The Browns are going to beat them this year.
No. No.
Miss Taylor, I have a couple more questions for you. That's it, okay?
Fine.
When you would talk to Stanley Ford, would you ever talk to him about going to church?
Objection beyond the scope.
May we approach?
You may. Tell her.
Hold on, ma'am. Hold on. Don't answer. Just hold on 1 second, okay?
hear me? Miss Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. I want to ask the jury to step out, and I want to talk to you personally, all right?
Fine.
All right, so don't say anything, sit tight for 2 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go too far, just step out into the jury room and into the outer way by the courtroom. We'll be back with you shortly.
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to ask,
Hold on. So this is outside the hearing of the jury, because I want to know what's about to be said before that bell gets rung.
And can we, I know when you're in that room, you can hear a lot what's going on. I don't know what we can do to avoid that.
or if Ken knows to just,
Just, hold on, I'm turning the program volume down. All right, go ahead.
okay, Ms. Taylor, can you answer the question, when you spoke with the Stanley Ford, did he talk to you about going to church?
We might have had a conversation about church, but I can't pull it up. I can't recall.
Is that all you're going to ask her?
No, I have one more question.
Ask me.
Ms. Taylor, you indicated on cross-examination that you don't believe that Stanley Ford started the fire.
That was my statement. Yes.
Have you seen any video evidence or physical evidence in this case?
None.
All right.
So I want to ask that question.
Okay, all right, Ken, bring the jury. Oh, gosh. Remember, this is redirect.
We don't, well,
I understand, but. So, Ms. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we wanted to know what the answer to your questions were before we brought the jury back in. So Mr. D'Angelo is going to ask you those questions again once we bring the jury back in, okay?
Fine.
And then you're almost finished, I promise.
Thank you.
You have something else?
No.
Okay, all right, Ken, go ahead and bring the jury back in. I'm gonna turn the program volume back up. Yeah, you may. So the objection, when you get back on, the objection is okay. Yes, sorry. All right, you may be seated. All right, Mr. Gorman, you may proceed. Mr. D'Angelo. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, we're missing someone. Thank you for pointing that out. You're allowed to speak, but I appreciate the hand raise. And did I say Gorman? I'm sorry, it's clearly D'Angelo. want to make sure we didn't lose you. All right. Once that, our juror is seated, go ahead, Mr. D'Angelo.
Ms. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. And when you would speak with Stanley Ford, would he ever talk to you about going to church?
He might have, but I can't pull it up. I can't recall. We might have spoke of church.
Ms. Taylor, you testified on cross-examination that you do not believe that Stanley Ford committed these offenses, correct?
Correct.
All right. Have you seen any video evidence or physical evidence in this case?
No, I have not.
And that opinion is just based on...
Yeah, sustained.
He had.
Hold on, ma'am. Hold on.
on.
I don't have any other questions, ma'am, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, that's it for your testimony. You can hit at the bottom of the screen, there's a button that says leave. If you do that, you'll leave the meeting, and we appreciate your participation today. Did you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're all done, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Tell her how to leave. Oh, wait, never mind.
Do it.
I see. Oh. All right. All right, try the next witness.
Tiffany Gary.
No,
Brian.
She's a no. Because of her previous.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Go ahead and have a seat. And you know, because you've been here before, pull the microphone in, keep your voice up, and once you're seated, take your mask off, and Mr. D'Angelo, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ms. Gary, welcome back. Hello. Previously, you had testified about the fire that you witnessed and observed on April 18th of 2016. Now, I'd like to talk to you today about the fire that occurred on May 15th of 2017, okay?
Yes.
And I think I do still need to ask you to state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Tiffany Gary, Gary.
Okay, Ms. Gary. And previously, you had testified, I'm referencing you to State's Exhibit number 13. Previously, you had testified that you are familiar with this map.
Yes.
Okay. And you, I believe, testified that you lived here in this corner here. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to show you now this map. It's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 14. Do you recognize this map?
Yes.
Okay. Still, just another view of your neighborhood. Is that fair?
Yeah, my old neighborhood.
Your house would have been down here at the corner of Fultz and Height. Is that fair?
Yes.
As I'm pointing to on State's Exhibit 14? Okay. Now, on May 15th of 2017, Ms. Gary, do you recall that date?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the jury why you recall that night, what you remember happening.
Because my son ran in my my room and said the house is on fire.
What time was this?
I have no idea what time it was.
Was it at night, morning, early?
That day, I'm thinking it was a holiday, so everybody was out barbecuing that day. But it had to be after about 12 or 1 o'clock.
Were you awake? Were you asleep?
No, I was asleep.
And you said your son came in and said the house is on fire. Did you think it was your house?
Yeah, I thought it was my house, so I told him to go get his sisters out.
What did you do then?
He said it's not our house. He said it's Jared's house.
What did you do after you learned that?
I ran outside and I ran straight to their house on like the right-hand side. Both me and my son. We ran to the right-hand side and we were seeing if we was gonna be able to get in the side door or the back door.
Of what house?
693 Fulton.
That would have been Jared's house?
Yeah,
What was Jared's last name?
Boggs.
How old was he?
He was the same age as my son, so about 13 and 14.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay. You're familiar with this thing? Yeah. Ms. Gary, can you point on the map that State's Exhibit 14 where you're referring that you and your son ran to? No, it's hard to see because of all the green.
Yeah.
Can you get up and maybe point to it?
Keep your voice up if you're going to talk without the microphone, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Here.
Okay. So you ran there with who?
My son.
And what did you see when you got there?
The left side of the house was like fully involved.
Could you get in?
No, by this time, it was like the fire truck had pulled up right in front of our house. And I told him, I said, it's like 5 or 6 people in there. I said, it's a whole bunch of kids. I said, this fire hydrant, I said, it don't work. So because the Boggs truck was right on the curb, the fire department couldn't pull up there. So they had to reroute, they had to go all the way cross height onto Russell. And they made the right and came back up from East Avenue.
Now you said that you knew Jared Boggs.
I knew all of the kids.
Okay. Did you know the mother and the father?
I had met her a couple of times when I went to go take him some shoes and drop some stuff off on the kids.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you a series of photographs that have been marked for identification purposes. It's State's Exhibits 107 through 109. Can you please take a minute to look at those? Let me know when you're finished. Very generally, ma'am, can you tell the jury what these photographs show?
The mom, Brittany, Jared, Deasia, and I can't remember the other 2 kids' names.
This is the Boggs family that you know, that you knew, that lived there.
Is it the picture somewhere that I'm supposed to
Yeah, I'm
see?
going to put the pictures up here. But these photographs show you the family that you knew that lived there.
Yes,
At 693 Fultz.
yes.
I'm going to put on the document camera. That's right next to you there. State's Exhibit 107. Ma'am, so can you please, I think you can point if you
I'm good.
yeah, just tell us who you know in this photograph.
That's Jared.
Jared's the taller boy?
Yeah,
Yep.
he just got his mustache. That's Deasia.
Right here or right here?
The little girl down in the middle.
Okay.
That's the baby. Oh, I'm touching. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
I call him Jared Jr. because he looked just like Jared.
Okay.
And that other little girl, which was the oldest girl out of the bunch, on the right-hand side.
Do you know her name?
No,
Next thing I'm going to show you, ma'am, and who is the lady there?
that's their mom.
And do you know her name?
Amanda, Brittany. No, Brittany wasn't there. Oh gosh, I can't remember. It's been so long.
That's okay. And I'm showing you State's Exhibit 108. Do you recognize the people in that photograph?
Yes.
And who are they?
That's Jared's mom, and that's his stepdad.
Okay. Finally, State's Exhibit 109. Ma'am, do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
And are these the family that live there?
Yeah, that was all the kids.
Now, which one of these kids did you know the best?
Jared.
Okay. And I think you referenced it earlier, but you know him from how?
My son.
Was your son friends with him?
Yes, he was friends with him.
Do you know if the family had any pets?
They had a yellow dog, and then they had a cat.
Okay. And Miss Gary, how well did you know the parents? I mean, you don't seem to remember their names, but back then, how well did you know them?
I didn't know them that very well. I talked to them in passing, and when my daughter asked me to go see if she could spend the night over there, I went and talked to her.
Okay. And by her, are you referring to the mother?
Yes.
And what was your general opinion about letting your children go to that house, that residence?
It was traffic there.
What do you mean by that?
It was just a lot of guys over there.
Okay. Did you like that element that was hanging out there?
It made no never mind to me as long as it didn't come to my house.
Okay. Miss Gary, did you know the man that lived next door to 693 Fultz heading towards East Avenue? So I would say that that's
Mr.
west.
Paul.
What's his name?
Paul.
Mr. Paul. And I'm going to show you a photograph that's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 110.
Yeah, that's Paul's house.
This is Paul's house, and then this would also be 693 Fultz?
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a fair and accurate depiction of the house after it had burned.
Yes.
Okay. Miss Gary, I'm putting on the document camera here, State's Exhibit 110. What house or what residence is this that I'm pointing to there?
That was the boss house.
Okay. And then this house here, whose house is that?
That's Paul's house.
What happened to the side of Paul's house?
It melted.
How well did you know Paul?
And I would go talk to him.
Okay.
Every other day, just to make sure he's fine because he's deaf.
He's deaf. What do you mean by that? Like,
He can't hear.
And why would you go check on him?
Well, I probably remember from the first time. I used to walk my dogs up that street. And he had 3 dogs. He had a black dog, he had a multicolored dog, and then he just had a brown dog. And every time I would go past there, the dogs would sit up there and start barking at my dogs. So one day he was outside feeding the cats. And I went and talked to him, and it was longer from there.
When you would go on those walks, would you ever talk to the defendant about the people at 693 Fultz?
No.
Okay. Ms. Gary, did you know of any conflict or between the defendant, Stanley Ford, and the Boggs family at 693 Fultz?
Just what I heard.
Okay, and we don't want to hear what you heard. Okay. You didn't hear it from the defendant?
No.
Okay. How long did they live there, the Boggs family?
I know they had moved from down the hill, on the same side where I was, to up the hill.
Okay.
So it had been about 5 years.
As they were there and your son was playing with their son, would they stay inside most of the time? Would they come outside? How often was that?
The kids was outside all the time.
Playing in the yard all over the place?
Yes.
When was the last time you saw the Boggs family?
They was outside on the side of the house barbecuing that day.
Okay. All of them?
I remember, I think it's the oldest daughter, I think her name is Brittany. She had went to Cedar Point because she was friends with my daughter. I didn't see Brittany a lot. But Brittany had told my daughter that she was going to Cedar Point to train. And she was staying up there in some apartments that they housed a staff at.
Okay. At that residence there at 693 Fultz, did the children have any toys or anything outside?
Yes. They had tons of them.
All over the place?
Yeah, it was all over the place.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Riley?
Ms. Gary, do me a favor. I'll never mind. Forget it. I was gonna have to clear the screen.
Ms. Gary, I just have a couple questions for you. You were interviewed by the Akron Police Department early morning of May 15th, right?
Yes.
So it's like 5 o'clock in the morning they talked to you, correct?
Yes, basically when they started bringing bodies out.
All right. And you had told them that earlier in the day, so if it was Monday morning a.m., earlier in the day, which I assume would be Sunday, you heard some arguing over there. Do you recall telling them that?
Yeah, I heard people arguing.
Right. You referred, at least into the police, that it was the boyfriend who I believe is Mr. Huggins, correct?
Mr. Huggins, yeah, that's his name.
And you heard him arguing, correct?
He was arguing with somebody.
And you have no idea who that was, correct?
No.
All right. And you also made mention that there was a red and orange car over at the house that day, correct?
Yeah, the one that was sitting up on top of the hill. But I didn't know if it was for their house or for the house next door.
And you also told them that there were a lot of people there and a lot of dudes hanging out, right?
Yeah, points of time, yes.
And you believe that the red and orange car belonged to Mr. Huggins' nephew, correct?
It could have.
Yeah. And he was one of the guys who was hanging out over there, correct?
Yeah.
Right. As far as you knew, Mr. Huggins didn't work, but he was at the house all the time, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, Ms. Gary, you're excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 3:05. We're going to go ahead and take our afternoon recess. Remember the admonition I've previously given you concerning your conduct. Again, it's important that you be fair and attentive throughout the trial. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, including family, friends, or the media. You must not post or read anything about this case, either on the internet or through your electronic devices, including your cell phones. Any such discussion, if discovered, could lead to a mistrial and, again, severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence, and do not form or express an opinion on this case until it's finally been submitted to you. I show 5 minutes after 3. If you'll be back in the jury room at 3:20, we'll proceed with the following witnesses we have for today.
All right, please.
Leave your notepads upside down in your chairs. Such a headache today.
2 911 dispatchers, and I had a patrol officer that I thought was going to have come, but
So you don't have them here then?
No, I told him come tomorrow.
Okay.
The one's on video, right?
What's that?
The one on.
Yep, and then we're not having.
Did you click on the link? Okay. Okay. All right, so this is what we need you to do. You have to go onto Google. And type in ring central, one word, the one word. And when you do that, then scroll down, and there'll be a ring central thing at the top, and the second ring central thing will have like some options underneath it. One will say download app. When you scroll down the page, you see it says app download. downloaded, it's on the account. Do you see a little icon there on your computer screen for it? Yeah, so when you click on it, does it ask for a meeting ID number? Do you see that? Okay. No, that's okay. Let's try this. Go to back to that Google page, and where it says Ring Central, click on Ring Central. And you see up in the upper right-hand corner it says Join a Meeting. Click on Join a Meeting. Does it ask you for a password there? Okay. All right. Here you go. Ready? 1, 4, 8, 0, 7, 0, 6, 4, 0, 1. It's going. Okay, I think I can see you. Hold on, I'm going to hang up my phone, okay? Miss Briggs, can you hear us? Okay, so we can't hear you. Okay, hold on 1 second, okay, ma'am? Oh, I think I know what your problem is. Can you hear us now, ma'am? Okay, we can hear you. All right. So just sit tight here, and then when we get going, the judge is going to bring you, or is going to have you come up, and then she's going to have you take an oath, okay? Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to mute you now. You can Do you see the mute button there on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen?
Yes.
You can mute yourself. That would be helpful. Briggs? Ms. Briggs? You're muted. This trial is being recorded, and you have the right under Ohio law to opt out, meaning they will not record your case. They will record what you say, the things that you say, but you have the right to choose one way or the other, if you're okay with it, or if you choose to opt out. It's totally up to you. We're giving all the witnesses the option. Say that again. Okay. It does not matter to me. It's totally up to you. Next thing I'm going to do, ma'am, is I'm going to play this for you to see if you can hear it. Could you hear that, ma'am? Okay, I think I got to share the screen. Can you hear that, ma'am? Barely? Okay. We'll turn up the volume. Okay, just sit tight. Yes, sir.
Summit County Court of Common Pleas is again in session. The Honorable Christine Kirkey presiding.
Thank you. You may be seated. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state's going to call Cindy Briggs. Ms. Briggs, you can unmute yourself. The judge is going to come read to you an oath, okay?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Briggs, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and a couple things. Because of the technology, you have to wait till the question's completely asked before you answer, because it'll cut you off, or it'll cut off the question, and the court, of course, there's a court reporter taking down the testimony, so we want to make sure we hear the full answer, or the full question and the full answer. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and if there's an objection, I know it may be hard to hear, but don't answer until I've ruled on the objection and you're told that you may answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, can you please state your full name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Cynthia Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S.
Ms. Briggs, where do you currently live?
I currently live in Denver, North Carolina.
At some point, did you live in Akron, Ohio?
Yes, sir.
And where were you employed when you lived here in Akron, Ohio?
The city of Akron.
What did you do for them?
I was a 911 dispatcher.
How long were you a 911 dispatcher for the city of Akron?
5.5 years.
5.5 years. And had you worked anywhere else as a 911 dispatcher?
No.
Okay. What type of training did you undergo that enabled you to become a 911 dispatcher?
We had training for a little over a year, 12 months, in call taking, dispatching leads and services.
Okay. And what do you do now?
I currently am unemployed.
Okay. Now, Ms. Briggs, I'd like to draw your attention to May 15th of 2017. Do you recall that date?
Yes, sir.
Were you working in your capacity as a dispatcher for the Akron Police Department Dispatch Center on that date?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you have a chance to receive a 911 call in reference to a fire on Fultz Avenue in the city of Akron?
Yes, sir.
And ma'am, when you received that call, can you please describe the demeanor of the caller?
Am I able to hear the call again?
Sure. I'm going to play for you the call, see if you recognize it, and then we'll go from there. The other question I had for you, though, is was the caller describing an event that they were observing?
I believe so.
Okay. And what type of a call was this for?
For house fire?
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. If you can't hear it, please let me know.
Yes, sir.
You can always move your microphone down towards the speaker by the computer.
Okay, I'll try.
Hopefully that will help.
All right.
May 15, 2017 at 2:49 on channel 6.
Ma'am, can you hear that?
I can't really decipher what is being said.
Okay.
But I do believe I remember the caller sounded in distress that the house was on fire.
Okay. And
I believe that we had other calls on that as well.
Okay.
Hello? Hi, this is Dr. Gunn. We got a call from your number.
Ms. Briggs, do you recognize any of the voices on there?
Yes, sir.
And whose voice do you recognize?
I believe that was me calling her back.
Okay. And describe that. What do you mean by you calling her back?
Well, apparently a call came in and they hung up or we got disconnected and I had to do a call back.
Okay.
Which is standard procedure.
This is the call recorded call that you took on May 15th of 2017.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's a house on fire. I smell the gas. I mean, the smoke from my house on Guilford Street. Okay, what's the address of the fire? I don't know. It's almost gone. The whole house is almost burnt up. I just looked out my window from the corner. I walked to the corner. The house is on fire. It's almost gone. Okay. So it's almost burnt, right? The street is Fultz off the Hillcrest. And the house is almost gone. I'm at the corner. I stay on Hillcrest. I'm at the corner. The house is almost gone. Okay, so you're saying it's on Fultz? Yes, it's on Fultz. Off the Hillcrest corner. Hillcrest corner? Okay. And this house is almost gone. It's about to be hitting the house next door to it, and I don't even know if anybody's staying in the house next door to it. It's the corner in front of the house that's on fire. But I don't see nobody outside on the street at all. I don't even see don't nobody near this shit. Okay, we can get another call, now. Okay, there's a house, a car at the house is on fire? Yeah, the house, there's a car sitting right in front of it. Okay, and you don't see any people? No, I don't see no one. What is your house? Is almost, my name is Shakira Richardson, I stay at 1383 Hillcrest. For sure. It's not just started in the house next door to it, I don't even know if nobody in the house. Okay, what is your address again? Mine is 1383 Hillcrest. Okay. I heard all the booming from the back. I thought somebody, it was sounding like it was on the side of my house, so I'm gonna stop the window, see the smoke, so I walked out to the corner. That house is gone. And this brother started touching the house next door to it. Okay, well, fire company is on its way. Yeah, I hear them, but it don't sound like they closed at all. Okay. And they had, I think that sounds, I don't know if that sounds, but they had a party out the other day or not, but somebody had a party on this street earlier and today. See, it's getting bad. Okay, the ambulance just had to back up. And then the first one's here. Who had to back up? The ambulance just had to back up. Oh, okay. It just did another big old boom. Like an explosion? That one's here. Yeah. It just keeps on popping like it's an explosion. That's what woke me up. Okay. Alright, yeah, and Engine 4 should be there also. If you find yeah, they're pulling them now. Okay. Yeah, they're pulling them out. Yeah, we have a whole bunch coming. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for calling. Right.
Your Honor, for the purposes of the record, I have just played State's Exhibit 111. Ms. Briggs, are 911 phone calls recorded at or near the time that they're made?
Yes, sir.
And is it the regular practice of the Akron Police Department to record 911 phone calls?
Yes, sir.
And are the recorded calls kept in the regular course of the business activity of the Akron Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions for Ms. Briggs. The defense might have a couple questions for you, ma'am.
Gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Briggs, the defense attorneys don't have any questions for you, so we're going to thank you for your testimony, and you'll be excused from this hearing further. We appreciate it. I don't know if she heard me.
You're excused, ma'am. We don't need you any longer. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And your next one's in person?
Yes, and I believe she's in the hallway, but I have to go check. She's not here yet, Judge.
Nope. What time did you have her scheduled?
I thought 3:30, but I might have told her 4.
You may. We're just going to wait for Mr. LaPrinzi to come back in just to make sure that dispatcher Forsyth is not outside. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there is an additional 911 call taken by dispatcher Forsyth of the Akron Police Department. The parties at sidebar have agreed that they're going to stipulate as to the fact that that is a call kept in the regular course of business of the Akron Police Department. And then we're going to go ahead and play that 911 call, which is marked 113?
112.
112? Okay.
Conversation recorded on May 15, 2017 at 2:14:06 on channel 5.
Akron 911, what's the location of your emergency? There's a house on fire on Hook. I'm not sure what the address is. It's FLCC? Yeah. Is it by name church? Am I South Church or East? It's by Heights, 3630. Okay, can you see it from your house? Yeah. How high are the flames? They're pretty high. You know, how far away are you from it? Rest of the street, I'm at Hillcrest. Okay, is anybody there occupied? There are people that live there, yeah. Nobody been outside? I didn't see anybody. How far are you down the street? I don't know, I don't know. I'm not good with stuff like that. Do you hear anybody yelling or screaming, or is anybody, I don't know, anybody get out of the house? I don't hear anything. So about full to GLTC? Yes. Okay, well, let's find a car now, thanks. All right.
That's it?
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the extent of the testimony today. We're going to recess for the afternoon. Again, remember the admonition I've given you at all breaks and at the end of each day. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, including family, friends, or the media. You must not post or read anything about this case, whether in the newspaper, on the internet, or using any electronic device, including your cell phones. If discovered, Such discussion could lead to a mistrial and would severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence, and do not form or express an opinion on this case until it's finally been submitted to you. Again, we will start tomorrow at 9, so if you could be in the jury room, 5 or 10 till, we will proceed promptly at 9 o'clock with the state's case. Thank you. We're adjourned. Leave your notepads upside down in your chairs.
All rise, please.